Commission. I'd like to convene the meeting, call the meeting to order, and have a pledge of allegiance. Will anybody be putting the flag up, or will we just say the pledge of allegiance to the flag behind you, Travis?
I think it would be better just to do that one there. Yes.
Okay, very good. Well, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. When would you like me to read the script, Travis?
Now. Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. This is our first fully virtual CSEC meeting, so we appreciate everyone's patience as we navigate this new normal. There have been some situations where meetings have been hacked or what has been called Zoom bombed. Staff have taken all possible efforts to ensure that this does not happen. However, in the event that it should, the city sustainability coordinator will stop the video stream TV broadcast immediately. The meeting is able to continue. The stream broadcast will be reinitiated. If not able to reinitiate, the meeting will end and all matters that have not been considered will be postponed to a later date. Each member of the CSEC and staff members will be participating in the meeting from their home or office. They all have families, pets, or roommates. In order to be respectful of their private spaces, commission members may turn off their video, but they are still listening and participating. If a commissioner member leaves the meeting, they will let the chair or the city sustainability coordinator know, and that will be noted. Public comment for the meeting will be handled as follows. Zoom meeting using computer or smartphone. The city of Sonoma is now offering the ability to view and participate in the CSEC meetings via video meetings and telephonic conferencing via Zoom video conferencing computer technology. Instructions for participating via Zoom are provided on the agenda under public participation instructions, and the link can be found at www.sonomacity.org. Summarize, if a member of the public would like to speak, click on the raise hand feature in the webinar controls. This will notify city staff that you've raised your hand and you would like to speak. City staff will then unmute your microphone when it is your turn to provide public comment. A prompt will appear to confirm you would like to be unmuted. Once you accept the prompt, you will have 3 minutes to provide your public comment. Once your public comment is ended, you will be muted again. Zoom meeting using a regular phone. Call into the meeting and dial *9. This will notify staff that you have raised your hand for public comment. City staff will unmute your microphone when it's your turn to provide public comment. You will hear you are unmuted, and then you will have 3 minutes to provide public comment. Once your public comment is ended, you will be muted again. Email. Public comment can be accepted via email to publiccomment@sonomacity.org. Public comment can be submitted at any time. However, in order to be read into the record during the meeting, it must be submitted after the chair calls the meeting to order and prior to the close of the public comment period of the pertinent item. It will be read into the record with a maximum allowance of 3 minutes per individual comment, subject to the chair's discretion. Please include the item number that is being referenced in the subject line. Only one email per item can be submitted by each member of the public. And that is the initial statement there. And so now I will move to approval of the agenda.
Actually, we need to do the roll call before that, please.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Albach?
Yes, I'm here.
Commissioner Blattner?
Present.
Commissioner Funke?
Here.
I believe Commissioner Metzler is not here. Is that correct?
Yes.
Commissioner Morell?
Here.
And I also believe Commissioner Wagner is also not present tonight. Is that correct? Correct. So now we move to the approval of the agenda.
Can I get an agenda approval?
I move to approve the agenda.
A second.
Fred, sorry, you do want to mention that there is a slight change in tonight's agenda in that the special events coordinator, Lisa Jansen, was not able to attend. So we are suggesting that we postpone her agenda item until the next meeting so that she can be here to
Okay.
present. But I will be giving her update at the staff report update time.
Okay, that's agenda item 3.2 that will be postponed. Okay. Any other business?
That's actually agenda item 4.1.
Okay, I thought 3.2. Well,
4.2. Yep, I've only got half of it on my screen. Sorry, I thought you said 3.1. So, but it's 4.2.
okay. So, any other business here before we move to approve the agenda? We have a motion and a second. Will everyone raise their hand who wants to approve the agenda?
Excuse me, you'll need to do a roll call vote for all votes, Travis.
Okay. Commissioner Alabak,
Yes.
Commissioner Blattner,
Yes.
Commissioner Funky,
Yes.
Commissioner Morrell.
Aye.
All right, it's approved unanimously.
Okay, now on to agenda item 1, comments from the public. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda. It's recommended that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Under state law, unless otherwise permitted under the Ralph M. Brown Act, the merits of the matter presented under this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by the Community Service and Environmental Commission at this time. For items appearing on the agenda, the public will be invited to make comments at the time the item comes up for CSEC consideration. Upon being acknowledged by the chair, please step to the podium and speak into the microphone. Begin by spelling your name. So that's a quaint throwback to the pre-C19 order of operations that we had. But does any member of the public have any comments? We'll give you a little bit here to raise your hand and be acknowledged by staff.
All right, we have one comment from Tom Conlon, and I'm going to go ahead and allow him to speak. Tom, you can speak now.
Looks like he's still
You
muted.
need to unmute, Tom.
I'm working on that. I've unmuted him. Okay.
There you go, Tom.
We can't hear you, Tom. Tom might want to try calling in on his phone. Oh, he's got a message and he said he just wanted to say congratulations, no worries. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
And there are no written comments from the public. Thank you.
What is he
Well,
congratulating us on?
Making the Zoom call finally work.
Oh,
Maybe. Smart Alec here.
Well, it's good to have a public comment from Tom for old time's sake here. Okay, I guess we're done with public comment. If we see, there's no more hands for public comment, Wendy?
No.
Okay. Oh, I already read the new public comment process for virtual meeting. So now we'll move to agenda item 3, the consent calendar. Item 3.1, discuss and possible action on the minutes from the March 11th, 2020 CSEC regular meeting. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Get a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Travis, you're muted.
My space bar is not working. I said, who seconded that? It sounded like a tie to me.
Call it for Sandy. She was slightly there ahead of me.
Okay.
Well, Kimberly will get the next one.
Okay. All right. So Commissioner Alabak,
Yes.
Commissioner Blattner,
Yes.
Commissioner Funky,
Yes.
Commissioner Morrell.
Aye.
Okay. Unanimous pass. Approval of the minutes.
Okay, now on to agenda item 4, regular calendar. Matters requiring discussion and or action by the CSEC. This is agenda item 4.1. Are we doing this, Travis?
We should, yes, we are. That's,
Okay. This is agenda item 4.1, presentations of 2018 city services greenhouse gas emissions inventory.
yep. David Leland is going to be presenting. We're going to, there he is.
There it is.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, David.
Hi, David.
It's a brave new world, isn't it?
Yes.
Sort of.
So David, whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'm ready. So let me get this up. Can you all see my screen now?
Can see you.
No, can't see your screen.
Okay. Let me go back here. I'm going to share my screen.
Is my audio working?
Yes, we can hear you, Tom.
Thank you.
There it is.
There it is. Up. Oh, oh.
Okay. Can you see that now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, we're all good.
Good job.
All right. You never know. We're all learning how to do this stuff. Okay, so this is a report on the results of the Sonoma Municipal Operations Inventory, which we did for the year 2018. If you recall, last fall, we presented the methodology that we used, the data sources and the methodology. And that is, all of that detail, along with these results, are contained in the report that we have put together, and that I believe Tom submitted to Travis just a few minutes ago. So that will become available to all of you if you have any if you want to dive in deep on the details. But we're just going to focus on, I'm going to summarize the what we looked at and the approach that we took, but I'm mostly going to talk about results and recommendations. So here's what we looked at for the inventory. We looked at the city fleet, the police fleet, building and facilities use of natural gas and electricity, employee commutes, and air travel. We had different level of confidence in the data that we were using, and therefore in the results. So the vehicle fleet, natural gas and electricity, we had detailed invoices or utility bills to work with. So our confidence in those is very high. Police fleet, we had a moderately high level of confidence. We had 1 month of data, so we assumed that represented 12 months. There's opportunity for refinement there. Employee commute, we had information on the number of employees and a rough idea of where they lived, and so we have a moderate confidence there, and the air travel is kind of anecdotal. You can see the numbers at the bottom. I'm going to show these in a couple of different ways. So here's a bar chart that shows them. You can see that the transportation elements here, the fleet, the city fleet, the police fleet, and the employee commute dominate the inventory. Natural gas and electricity are very modest fractions comparatively, and air travel is almost noise. If we look at it a different way here as a pie chart, again, you can see that the transportation elements are what it's all about. And that it represents a change from 2000, I think, is the inventory that the inventory estimate that we have to compare this to. And in 2000, and this is the second column in the table here, electricity and natural gas represented something more than or roughly equal to fleet and commute to the transportation elements. So as you can see on the right-hand side, the electricity element of the city's inventory compared to 2000 has dropped dramatically, close to 90%. We've also had drops in the transportation elements, but not nearly as much, and a net drop of about 50% compared to 2000. So big progress has been made, but the effort really now needs to go into transportation in particular. So this just summarizes that. 90% is about transportation-related usage of fossil fuels. Electricity is 5%, natural gas about 4%. So in terms of recommendations, the big one is reduce transportation-related usage of fossil fuels. That could be done in a variety of ways. One that would be relatively easy to implement at this point would be using biodiesel or some other renewable diesel, if that's feasible. A second option would be to replace fleet vehicles with either hybrid or battery electric vehicles. And that's something that would be relatively easy to do as vehicles come up for replacement. So that should be something that should be considered in the budget planning process. And in some cases, if early replacement of EVs has a life cycle cost advantage, it wouldn't be necessary or even maybe wise to wait for the vehicle to run its useful life, but to short circuit that if there were a cost benefit to the city for that. It's also, there's a lot of stuff happening with EV trucks, although it hasn't really quite gotten to market yet, but many players are working on that. And there are some folks working on this who are close to having a kind of a light duty EV truck on the market, which should match up with the needs of at least some activities of the city. So that's something to keep track of. But in general, the idea is to avoid investing in new gas or diesel vehicles because they are going to be obsolete sooner rather than later. Another possibility for reducing fossil fuel and GHG emissions associated with those is to incentivize employees to cut their commute emissions. We understand that there was an incentive policy that was drafted in 2017, so maybe picking that back up and seeing and updating it would make sense. There are resources out there. The County Transportation Authority has an employer commute program toolkit, and the logical next step in that direction would be to assess the interest of employees in doing something along these lines. There was a rough idea of people's commute patterns, but I don't understand, or I don't believe that there's been any work to understand what employees would be receptive to in terms of alternatives, whether that would be, carpooling or other variety of other possibilities. It's a lot easier to see that along the 101 corridor where the smart train is something that, that an employer could subsidize, but that doesn't really work for Sonoma. So there would be I think there'd be some value in looking at that with the employees. And then a third thing here that has become a more front and center issue in the last couple of months since Since the last meeting that you had was to continue to invest in pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. That will have both mobility and safety benefits. And if some of the employees of the city who live in town were to use those options, then that would reduce GHG emissions. In terms of energy efficiency generally, so now we're talking more about natural gas and electricity. The general idea is to continue to look for ways to reduce power demand. There is a pump testing program that PG&E sponsors that would affect both, well, that would affect the water and tertiary treated water. I don't know if the city has any involvement in tertiary treated water pumping, or if that's all done by the water agency, but the city certainly is involved in pumping potable water. So there might be an opportunity here, and that program was recently extended, but it's only been extended until the 1st of October of this year. So if that was something that the city hadn't done, it would be worth looking into that soon, to see whether there was an opportunity to take advantage of this program. I've added a couple of other things in here. I don't know what the status of lighting in city buildings and facilities is beyond the street lights, but if other lighting hasn't been migrated to LED, there's an opportunity there. And another idea that I had was to make it a policy that all purchases of equipment that the city makes that use electricity or natural gas have Energy Star certification, just to make sure that, so this is a way to in the climate emergency that we are in, to immediately make a change that would prioritize or elevate greenhouse gas concerns and climate concerns into the actions that the city is taking. All of these things would have the benefit of lower costs over time. With respect to natural gas use in buildings, one opportunity is to use mini split heat pumps. This is something that Tom knows a lot more about than I do, but we've all noticed that in council chambers, especially in weather extremes, whether it's the winter or the summer, that the heating devices in there are incredibly noisy, and there's an opportunity there not only to save energy, but also to improve the experience of meetings of this commission and of the city council and anybody else that uses the council chambers. Not sure where the Carnegie Library building remodel stands, but there's certainly an opportunity there to build to the best energy efficiency standards. There also are heat pump water heaters that are now available that run on electricity, and so they displace natural gas use. So there's definitely a benefit there in terms of GHG reductions, especially since the city is now on Sonoma Clean Power Evergreen. So it's got a very small carbon footprint associated with that. And there are also opportunities that not only would have some benefit in terms of GHG emissions reduction through reduced fossil fuel use, but also in emergency preparedness and resiliency. This is something that we learned about through our work with the Valley of the Moon Water District, that combining solar, photovoltaic, and battery storage systems can give an entity like the city an uninterruptible power supply, which would have incredible value in an emergency. And one particular opportunity for that would be in what are called SCADA applications, system control and data acquisition, for example, on water supply system monitoring. So the water tanks typically have some kind of a data reporting installation there so that water managers know how much water is in the tank. And in a time of a power outage or an emergency, having that as a self-contained data delivery system has big benefits, because you don't need to worry about whether or not you can get fuel. And we've seen this in the planned power outages, that there might have been plenty of gasoline and diesel in tanks in the ground, but with the power out, it was difficult to get it, to get access to that. It also reduces staff time and risk, which was an issue that the Valley of the Moon encountered during the October 2017 fires. They were sending people out with generators that had to be refueled in the midst of these fires. That can save staff time and risk if you don't have to do that, if the city staff didn't have to go out there. So there are definitely some opportunities there. And that's it. Except to say that Tom and I think both would say that we've learned a lot from doing this, and we appreciate the opportunity to do it on behalf of the city, and hope to stay involved in seeing some of these ideas evaluated and implemented, we hope. So thank you.
Thank you, David. That's very good. Travis, do we have commissioner comments now?
Absolutely. Yep.
So why don't I, to kind of keep us from talking over each other, why don't I just work through and call on people? So David Morrell.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Chair.
Pro Tem.
Pro Tem. A comment about how good this is, David. Thank you so much. It's been a while working through it, and it's just great to have it. Couple of items here on my thinking. How much is that large commute number associated with one commuter, as opposed to a more general pattern that the city would want to consider for its employees more generally?
Well, there is one commuter who's a long distance commuter. We know that,
Yes.
but that doesn't dominate. It's an element, but certainly the commute miles are spread around in a variety of different classes of commuters, let's say.
So the carpooling and other concepts for local, more what we would call local employee commutes would potentially help reduce those numbers. That's good to know. Second question, sort of thinking about the future with transportation, I guess the issue is, when does the budget come up for leasing potentially new electric vehicles? And that becomes a timing issue for Travis and Wendy and Public Works and Kathy and the whole council, but it's obviously a pretty critical piece looking forward. And my other comment, thought, recommendation, question is, this is wonderful with respect to the city of municipal emissions. Where do we think we stand in doing a similar analytic on citywide GHG emissions in the city of Sonoma?
Well, that's the RCPA that is working on that. So that's Tanya Nareth and her group. They are leading that effort, and Wendy, I know, has worked with Tanya on gathering data for that. I don't know, Tom may, what the exact schedule for that is, or what it was. At least it may not be that now. Tom, do you have any insight on that?
Through the chair, my understanding is that is due quite soon, sometime here this summer. And Tanya may even be beginning to share some of her results. I think I may have seen that on an agenda someplace recently. So I just wanted to tag on to David's presentation. He really did a lot of the most of the heavy lifting on this project. And I think it's important to contextualize that the municipal emissions are just a small sliver of the overall citywide emissions, but it is how the city demonstrates leadership to the community at large. And so the fact that the city has really significantly reduced its emissions footprint over the last 20 years is something for the city to celebrate and to publicize. And so we have talked to Travis about the idea of maybe doing a press release around this and to kind of make it something that the city can take some credit for. So we'll be working with Travis offline on that idea. And let's see, just in general, you'll also recall that when I did present last year the methodology, one of the things that popped out at us is that the city has spun off to joint powers authorities and others some of its what used to be part of its municipal operations. Most significantly, the police has been transferred. However, as David went into the details, we do still purchase the police vehicles, and we fuel those vehicles and we own those vehicles at the city level. So as we look to the future, well, I guess I'll throw it out there. It's another benefit of defunding police.
With liberty and justice for all.
David, are you done with your comments and
I
questions?
am, Mr. Acting Chair. Yes, I am.
Pro Tem Chair. Sandy, do you have any questions or comments?
I do. Thank you very much, David and Tom, for your work on this. I think it's excellent. I also had some comments and actually a question for Wendy and Travis. I think one thing I did not see in the report when it comes to commute is the possibility of looking at, and I don't know what let me back it up. I don't know what the culture is with the city as far as working from home. I imagine everyone's culture working from home has shifted. I went from working at a nonprofit where if I showed up 3 times a week, it was like, what are you doing here so much? Go home, to working for the county where that just hasn't been the culture. And I'm anticipating working for the county that at least in my kind of position where I'm not out obviously doing maintenance in the parks, that that is going to shift. We're going to look at a shift. We're going to be pushing for a shift. I'd love to hear from Wendy and Travis about the culture of working from home, because it seems to me that's a very simple way to reduce greenhouse gases is just don't get in your car at all. So what do you feel like the culture is around that? Do you feel like that is maxed out? And do you feel like it's articulated? I'd love to hear from you all on that.
Wendy, do you want to start?
Sure.
And then I'll jump in, afterwards.
So I've been working from home mostly. I work from home doing things that I can't do from City Hall. So I only go to City Hall to do things that I can only do at City Hall, which is mainly look at building permits. The city manager has been having weekly meetings with us, and she's let us know that we're all going to be mostly working from home until at least July. And I guess we'll know more closer to July. But it's challenging for me as a planner to help people with plans when I'm not face-to-face looking at the document with them. But I could see that we'll be working from home, alternating days. I share an office with another associate planner. So, maybe I'll work on Mondays and Wednesdays and she'll work in the office on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Maybe we'll do that maybe for some indefinite amount of time.
Yeah, and I would say, well, for me, part of my position was to work from home, mainly because there isn't physical space in City Hall. but it worked fine with me. And it really depends on the position. So public works staff, they can't work at home because they're, unclogging sewer drains or field, they're doing field work. So they have to be there. And as Wendy mentioned, some of the planners have to be in there to show plans and meet. But it's interesting because the default was, no, you worked in the office. And so what this has changed is that perception for everyone. Is there ways to, work from home? And we haven't been said, no one's told us anything about that, but it's quite likely that that might fit into the greater realm. As Wendy mentioned, it's the city manager has been holding weekly all city staff meetings, and it works. I mean, without Zoom, it couldn't have been done. A lot of this can't be done. So it's going to be interesting. And it's not just going to be obviously the city hall, but other entities as well. So, I think it was demonstrated that we can perform this way. Certainly one of the thoughts would be, is that accepted by the community? If you have public workers that are not in, city hall. So I think maybe this is tamp that down a little bit. But that's always been an issue with some of the governments I've worked with before, is if you're not there, that kind of aspect.
I'd encourage us. I don't know if we can make a statement about it or where this report is going, but I'd encourage us to think of a way to promote that. And I think get past this idea that government workers have to have their butts in the seats to be the most efficient, because certainly I too am a government worker. I can tell you I get a lot done even with my kids screaming in my ear. I'm pretty productive, and yeah. I think the public gets more out of us. So I don't know, I'd like to include it in something like this and then think about how we can help change that culture, because that is, I think now we're at the precipice of this becoming more accepted. And that to me is thousands and millions of miles. We just don't have to be driving if we're not leaving.
And there have actually been some studies that you can reference that they were surprised to find that workers at home were actually much more productive because they put in many more hours. So, 9 o'clock at night, there's nothing great on TV. I'll work for a couple of hours. And that's what they found happen. So
Twitter said no one ever has to go back to work.
You done, Sandy?
Thank you. Yes.
Kimberly?
I was curious about, since obviously transportation is the big issue, and you made reference to potential replacement of gasoline automobiles. Did you do a real cost benefit analysis of kind of long-term projections of, selling on the entire fleet right now and replacing, or analyzing how old our fleet is and replacing them bit by bit? Was that done?
It's David. No, we didn't do that. We did have a list of no, we didn't even see a list of what the fleet looks like. We simply worked with the Voyager is a service that handles all of the fueling, and so we worked with the Voyager invoices, but we didn't actually see what the fleet was. So we have basically no insight on that.
But the city does have a vehicle log and has maintained one for a long time, and I have seen a copy of that several years back when Carol was the city manager. And every time a vehicle comes up for replacement on that log, my understanding is that they do a kind of check to see what is the most appropriate vehicle and pricing to replace that vehicle. But we didn't get a chance to really dive into that, and that's the kind of thing I think that Travis may have a chance to participate in going forward. There certainly is an opportunity to, David used the phrase, early replacement. It may actually behoove us, because so many of the vehicles the city owns are trucks, to do late replacement of our current aged fleet. let some of those vehicles last a year or two until the price of some of these lightweight trucks and midweight trucks come down to the point where it really makes sense to invest for the future.
Like what happened with solar panels.
Exactly. I mean, it's the kind of thing that there needs to be a kind of a strategy for it. You don't want to be the very first person buying an all-electric fire truck. The city of Cupertino, I believe, did just recently do that, or considered it at least. And I know there's a city in the South Bay that's driving Teslas for their police vehicles, at least piloting that type of vehicle. But there are other concerns as well, making sure you have the adequate infrastructure for charging. I recall the prior public works manager was concerned. He had some experience with alternative fuel, heavier duty trucks. I think he had experience with maybe it was a natural gas powered vehicle. And he had found that there were some difficulties in making sure that it was available for service all the time. It was just another thing to manage. So all of those things need to be taken into account, especially at a small city. We don't have, a large enough fleet to be the first ones on the block to be piloting these new technologies. But that said, I think the light duty truck market is about to hit us with very competitive pricing. And so putting off light duty trucks, letting them go a year or two beyond what was previously their expiration date, that might be a good strategy for us to start looking at.
You done, Kimberly? Well, for my turn, I'm just really glad to see you fellas back here and this project here, and I think it's great. And I'd like to ask Travis if you see, stuff that you can work with here. Is this something that's looking good to you, Travis?
Yes, especially the significant decrease in the greenhouse gas emissions, which David, I don't think you mentioned, but I think one of the drivers, well, one was the switching to the LED with the streetlights, but it was the switch to evergreen.
It's more than just evergreen. It's the state and county working together. So this really started with Schwarzenegger in 2004, I think it was, with setting a goal for decarbonizing the electric grid. Mm-hmm. And that then was followed by Sonoma Clean Power to offer an alternative to PG&E. And those two things together have moved, the county way down the road on that. So the city then enhanced that by switching from Clean Start to Evergreen, which Clean Start had already sort of wrung out 80% or something like that of the GHG associated with electricity, and the Evergreen then gets another 5 or 10% or something like that on the end, so that gets you to the 90. It's the three of those things together, probably also along with a lot of energy efficiency improvements in technology, so that the same job gets done with less electricity.
And let's not forget that the city invested in solar panels on 2 of its facilities as well. So there's a little generation happening in this time period as well.
Thank you, Tom. That's absolutely correct.
And I will say, I did see this presentation earlier, a draft, and I was able to provide some comments. And I think Tom just sent a revised version. So it's been on the back of my mind for a while. So definitely looking at some of that stuff. And as we all know, transportation is the biggest nut to crack in the city here.
It's not really a surprise what the results are.
Mm-mm. But they're good. Yeah. And like you said, it'd be nice to do something, take it to the next level about releasing it to the public, because we need good news. And I view this as good news, but I just want, again, I think that was great work. Thank you very much for doing all that work.
Thank you. We had a good time.
I'd like to second that, and I think that high level citizen involvement like this is something to really be showcased, and it's a good example of what citizens can do. And this is top quality stuff, and so I hope that this can go on the city website, and that the points that were made about the Public Works keeping an eye on things, and all the different ideas here can get worked into what the city's doing. And I'm just really glad to see you guys back here, and it feels like the train is kind of lurching along, and now that we have Travis as sustainability coordinator, this is a hopeful moment. And so thank you guys so much for working on this and staying patient for so long.
And if I can just put in a shout out to David Storer for giving us, having the faith in us to allow us to take that training alongside of other city employees around the state. David and I now really understand this pretty well. And that was a unique opportunity for us and for the city. And I'm glad David took advantage of that.
Yep, I second that. That was a big deal.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
well, don't leave yet, because we may have public comment come up here.
Okay.
Is there any hands raised for public comment?
Looking, let's see. No, there are not. And let me see if there's any written public comment. Just one moment. No written comment either. Thank you.
Okay, well, David and Tom, thank you guys so much. And we will move on to our next agenda item here, which is agenda item 4.2, consideration of a requirement for events at the Plaza and Depot Park for a simplified format with the estimation of modes of travel to allow the CSEC to calculate estimated GHG emissions.
That's the one that we are postponing till next meeting because Lisa Jansen was not able to be here tonight.
Okay.
And she was going to produce, part of that was to do the suggested language, and to discuss it more.
Okay. Is there any public comments only on the extension? Hearing none, we'll move to agenda item 5, CSEC members' reports and comments. It's like Mr. Morrell might be ready to do something here. He put his glasses on. Go ahead, David.
Very perceptive, sir. It's always good to be able to read. I did want to share with my fellow commissioners and members of the public our ability to have some excellent new projects on the horizon between the city of Sonoma in the environmental arena and the Sonoma Ecology Center. Travis and I in particular have discussed two items that I'd like people to know about. One is the possibility of a city-owned EV charging system, which the Ecology Center would help figure out how to finance with some refundable grants that may be available. And Travis and I have explored that a bit. The other is something that's just breaking news literally as of the last 24 hours, that we have identified an available USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service, NRCS, grant, probably in the level of 60 to 70K, for which the city would apply. This will, should we win it, it would be joint with the Ecology Center in support and a private technology firm out of Berkeley called All Power Labs that would deal with food waste generation in the city of Sonoma, composting of said food wastes, mixing it with biochar, and providing it to local gardens of various types to be identified, including school gardens, and hopefully things in the springs at La Luz and other partners in the springs. So it's potentially a very exciting project. Travis has already begun to draft a statement of work. I will spend some time tomorrow, Travis expanding that a little further and so on. So those are good things for the commission as a whole to be aware of. Both the substance of this and the interaction between a local environmental organization and the city of Sonoma pulling in the same direction together.
Really?
Yes. Do you know how much money is available for this organization to distribute and who will be competing against?
I can answer the first part quite explicitly. It's a national program. They have a total of $900,000. The minimum grants will be at 45, the maximum grant at 90. So a maximum of 20 grants gets you the right total allocation. So from a federal point of view, it's pretty darn small, but we think we have something pretty clever, and it relates to our ongoing puzzle about how to comply with something called SB 1383, the organic waste diversion program, for which this city and every other city is still scratching its collective cheeks about how the hell to comply with 1383, Travis and others. So it just might catch their eye, and it's a good chance to put a good proposal together and see what happens. It's not a big deal, but it's something.
And who would write the grant?
The proposal will be submitted by the city of Sonoma. The team will reinforce back and forth writing the draft. In case you had any extra editing time, that would be absolutely lovely. And we would, while it will be the city of Sonoma as the applicant, the whole process encourage a maximum number of partners. And they don't have to be within the city jurisdiction, as in the Springs, as in people who need food support and so on. So there are all sorts of interesting ancillary opportunities here. I'm intrigued with reaching out to the Chamber of Commerce and getting some food waste from restaurants into the game, whether or not they had their own garden. This can be a whole process that we can flesh out.
It might be good to approach Nostrovos, and they have the community garden at Larson.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and the school district, which has school gardens.
Fred? Oh, wait.
Yes.
Fred, I'm going to be visually gone for about 2 minutes, but I can still hear what's going on.
Okay. Any other commissioner comments? Well, I'd like to say that the last time we had our meeting was just before things really got deep. We were in the city council meeting chambers there, and we were bumping elbows and doing social distancing. And then, boy, a couple of days later, it just hit. And so here we are, like 3 months later, with this video thing and Zoom, and it's really something. So I'm really glad to just see us back here and getting the ball rolling. And so thanks for the city to having the meeting and getting things going here. And so I don't really have any other comments besides that. David?
Yes, I also wanted to comment for the group and consider a proposal or an agenda item for next month. This has to do with the City of Sonoma Climate Emergency Resolution, which I understand was adopted by the council at a recent meeting, and that the council set up a ad hoc council subcommittee of 2 members of the city council to sort of manage the next steps in the city's approach to its climate emergency resolution. And I wondered whether it would make sense to put on the agenda for the CSEC for our next month, whether we want to propose 1 or more CSEC commissioners interested in climate emergency action that might join in some way with the city council. And maybe Travis wants to share more about that item before we get into a proposal for next month.
Sure. That was on one of my things I was going to talk about. So in essence, what they did was they passed, the city council passed unanimously a hybrid between what the CSC had recommended and what the staff had recommended. So some items from the staff report were adopted, others were rejected, and vice versa. But I think one of the more interesting aspects is what David had mentioned, is they approved the creation of a joint So I wouldn't say it's an ad hoc, and it's not actually an ad hoc. It's a standing, from my understanding, a joint CSEC City Council Climate Action Subcommittee. The details are not there yet because basically the budget workshop was postponed, and it postponed some things. But and it's not finalized, but from my understanding, there's going to be 2 people from the city council. I believe they've already been identified, and they're looking at representatives from CSCC. The actual mission and charter have not been worked out yet. That's going to be, but I think that's actually pretty exciting news. I think, that was pretty exciting. So it is going to be this joint committee. So that's where it stands right now. The next step, I think, is going to be fleshing out some sort of charter and mission and meeting schedule. All I know is it's expected to meet quarterly or probably quarterly or 3 times a year with 4 members in dealing with climate action at a higher level.
I'm not sure they'll be able to have a joint committee until they pass the cannabis measure.
Yeah.
Kimberly, do you have any comments for commissioner comments?
Oh, well, before we do that, is David was suggesting it's a potential item for the agenda.
Sure.
So you have to vote, if you decide to do that, you have to vote to agendize that for next meeting.
Okay.
If there's a second and discussion and so forth.
It sounds like what you've told us, Travis, it's premature. Until the council effort proceeds a little further would be what I gathered from what you added to the process. I just knew it was happening and wanted to not miss out on next month if it were appropriate, but it sounds like it's maybe 2 months off.
My recommendation would be to hold off just to see because once you see the charter and everything, then I think you can make it a more informed decision as to who would want to and who should be on that from the CSEC. Mm-hmm.
Can we get a copy of that charter somewhere, or that's still in process?
It's in the cloud. There is no charter yet, but will be the next step, is to draft that. So
you can give us an update on that.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially since you're going to be part of that subcommittee.
So you happy with that, David?
Yes, that seems perfectly acceptable and a
good
good step forward by the city.
Okay. Any more commissioner comments? Hearing none, we'll move to staff comments and announcements. Item 6.1, Sustainability Coordinator Update.
Great. Well, thank you. First thing is, yes, the RCPA is doing a 2018 update, so I think that's great. And so what David and Tom's presentation was also 2018, so it's always good from a data perspective to have matching years, so that'll be really helpful. So the City Council unanimously, that's a hard word for me tonight, unanimously approved the waste fee increase. So I don't know if there wasn't much discussion, but a key component of that waste fee increase from Sonoma garbage collectors was that there was going to be funds that come back to the city that are dedicated to support, in part, the sustainability coordinator position, and also some of the public information officer's position, specifically for education and outreach for SB 1383. So that funding is for however long, it's an annual thing. So that was a really important step to support that position, especially as the budget is coming up. So that was good on many levels. So we do have that position partially supported, I guess I would say, on a permanent position. We went over the climate emergency resolution, and again, I was kind of surprised very pleasantly that subcommittee idea came up and was approved. So that was great. So an update on the EV charging stations. So Some of you may or may not know there are 4 DC fast chargers. So the DC fast chargers are the really, you can basically charge your vehicle in a half an hour. The most expensive and the most desirable for quick charges. There's 4 of them that have been installed at the Bank of America building. They're part of the Electrify America company, which was created specifically for EV charging stations from Volkswagen in their so-called Dieselgate settlement. They're all installed, but they have not been energized by PG&E. And the latest update I got was that it is late summer or early fall before the switch is turned on. Those are public charging stations, even though they're in the Bank of America parking lot. I've looked at them. So that'll be a huge boost, because right now all we have publicly available are the 2 level 2, which are pretty old and don't know how long they're going to last, the ones behind the Sebastiani. I'm still actively pursuing the public level 2 chargers under the Cal E VIP rebate program, which is administered through the Sonoma Clean Power. I looked at 3 locations. 2 of them we had to eliminate because in reality, it seems kind of simple, but it's how close are the chargers to a suitable electrical panel? And is that electrical panel capable of charging multiple vehicles? And 2 of the places we looked at weren't going to work. That would be the police station, because the electrical panel is actually on the opposite side of the building where the public station, so it becomes so expensive. And also the fire department public spacing also is just not going to work, because there's a large, significant concrete pad with diesel tanks on top of it. And you're not going to be trenching under that with electricity. So we're looking at one more site, but we've hit a snag in that it requires PG&E involvement to do a split meter. And so that could be a huge drawback just to get PG&E involved. So that's where we're at right now. I have had some discussions with Tesla. They're interested. Sonoma is on their map for potential siting. So I've met with them a couple times recently, but they have their own proprietary internal decision making. But should they decide to do it, there would be no cost to the city. They do it all, which would be real good. But I have nothing to report other than I've met with them and they're interested, which to me is a huge step anyways, because I've been trying to get in touch with them, and that's worked out pretty well. I've also reached out to Chamber of Commerce and private businesses, all trying to get involved in this program. The challenge with the Cali VIP program is that it's a rebate. So you have to pay up front for the equipment and the siting. And actually the siting can be the more expensive aspect, getting the electricity there, having the concrete pad. In public spaces, there's van accessible for accessibility issues. Those can be much more expensive, but it's a rebate program. So these times right now, it's hard to expect businesses to come up and pay up front with a rebate down the road when they're dealing with more probably other issues right now. So, but I have another meeting on Friday that we may be able to break that log jam on the public property. I don't know. The good thing about this program is it's a 3-year program. So it has diminishing costs. I think the first year, I can't remember, it's like $30 million. It's for Sonoma County and Mendocino County. After the first year, after they expend the funds, they're gone. And then the second year, and then the third year. So if we, and then July 8th is the time that you submit your paperwork. So if we don't make it this year, there's always next year. As we keep talking about transportation, if we don't, ultimately we have to electrify the transportation. That's the only way we're going to make achievements with greenhouse gas reductions, but also to be attractive to car-based tourists, because if they're coming here, they want to charge their vehicle, because electric vehicles are going to, supplant internal combustion engines in the not too distant future. So another project I've been working on, and this was brought up by David Leland and Tom Conlon, is the battery backup. So with the police station here, it's also where the Emergency Operations Center is located. And during PSPSs, there's a power issue here. And this is important to have a battery backup. But a battery backup also is not just for emergency. You can store the solar power and use it as well. So we're working through Sonoma Clean Power, and they have a consultant that has done an analysis on both of our PV solar projects at the Corporation Yard and here. And I got the report, and I provided some comments, and I'm waiting for a final report. I was hoping to have it tonight, but it shows the analysis of how productive both of these solar units are. In fact, what they did find is that we're under the wrong time of use rate for PG&E, that if we immediately change, we can get an immediate savings. So it already was pretty beneficial. So hopefully that was done. The next level, or the next task, is to do a complete analysis of, I believe it's just the police building here, about a battery backup system for the solar system. So the consultants are working on that, and we should be getting a final report. Sonoma was the first city to get any of these reports that will talk about whether it's feasible and what are the funding options. So it's just an analysis. We would have to come up with funding, but because it would be part of the resiliency program, I would like to think that there's a little bit more funding available than just to maximize the benefit of the solar power. The next thing on my project is, and these are just the major things that I talk about. There's lots of other things in the fire that I'm working on as well, but finally have gotten to overhauling the sustainability website. So what I've done is created a template for, it's going to be broken up into like energy, transportation, and so forth. Each page is going to have tips, tools, and then assistance, whether that's free or rebates or so forth. So that's what we're looking at based on the great work Tom Conlon did. And I've given this to Sarah to work on this, from how do you actually do this on a website. And once that template is done, then I'll be able to feed the rest of it in. So hopefully I'll have a lot more, and maybe we can show you the demo for next meeting, so that can get your input and advice before we move it to the next step. And finally, in looking at my work plan, the one project that I'm going to have difficulty doing is, so the approved sustainability work plan, one of the items was the city was to support the creation of a local nonprofit focusing on creating bike and pedestrian trails, which is a model that other municipalities have had, where the city can only do so much, but nonprofits have stepped in to identify and negotiate, fundraise, whether it's easements or whatever, to help develop a pedestrian and bike trail network or system. And so this is an area that definitely needs I'm basically looking to you all to provide some guidance, help, assistance in trying to think about how we can support the creation of a local nonprofit. As it was mentioned earlier, as we know, the bike and pedestrian aspect is an important aspect here, and it's something that could benefit from that type of building up more. And again, the city is limited in what it can do. In this case, a nonprofit could take it to the next level. So that's all I have from the sustainability coordinator update. I do have the special events coordinator update I'll do, but if you have any comments, questions, or whatever, please ask.
Anyone?
Chairman Fred, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
May I ask a question?
Please.
Okay, couple, thank you so much for that very thorough report. You've really been busy. So I just wanted to clarify, you are working on with private businesses and that have kind of big parking lots as well for the EV charging?
Yes. So what I've done is Sonoma Clean Power has selected what they call a preferred company, and that would be ChargePoint. So I've met with ChargePoint a number of times, and we've collectively identified potential private parking lots that would be suitable, and they would then take the next step to work with them. I've also reached out to the Chamber of Commerce. I wrote an article for their newsletter. It's gone out to the newspaper because the funding, it doesn't matter who the entity is. So it can be private, nonprofit, or for-profit. There are just some limitations as to accessibility. For example, the level 2 chargers, as long as workers have access to it, that counts. So that's where I've gone. So, and if anyone wants to spread the word, please do.
That's great. I know Tina, have you been talking to Tina Luster? She's the property manager for the big parking lot and the property over at Whole Foods and then Sonoma Market. Maybe not Sonoma Market, maybe the Albertsons. The owner originally didn't want to give up the ADA spots, but if now it doesn't have to be ADA spots, I think that could be an in over there.
So yeah, the rule is if it's fewer than 4 charging ports, you have to have van accessible space, which is based on length. If it's more than 4, then you have to also have an ADA compliant handicapped spot. So that's kind of the break point. I know that ChargePoint has worked with Safeway. I don't know if they're working with them specifically in Sonoma, but they are a client throughout the country. And I know that they've been in touch with the ChargePoint has been in touch with the other owners, but I have not personally.
Good. Great.
There's just a certain point where I need to step back and let them
Sure.
handle that. Yep.
Thanks for explaining how it works. I was just wondering if you had an update on, we're finishing up our fiscal year for Measure M. And as I recall, the Measure M monies were going to go for the new garbage cans. And last I looked, the garbage can project has not been fulfilled. So that's one whole year of, I think it was 100 and some K for those garbage cans and recycling. Do we have if you don't have an update on that, can we get updated on that next month and hopefully see that move forward? Because it's been, I feel like 2 years for the garbage cans.
Yes, I will get an update on that and get back to you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any more questions or comments for Travis? Travis, I had a question. When you first got here, we had a few chats, and you said you were a get it done guy and you wanted to go get for the big ticket items quickly. And so how do you feel like you're shaping up for your 2 years here?
Wow. Did I really say that? I'm just kidding.
You did.
Yes. I'm just kidding. I don't know. I have a lot of hope with the EV charging because right now we just don't have much. It's totally insufficient. So if we could break through that, I would be pretty happy with that. I think that right now that's like the one big project that would really excite me and I think would accomplish something. And so I have a meeting Friday whether I think it's gonna go ahead. So that's the big project. Some of the things certainly before I wasn't, SB 1383 was sort of in the back burner and now it's come up to the front burner, especially because of the responsibility and the potential liability onto the municipality for compliance with all generators. So I'm going to be doing a lot of work on that as well. So some of those are not big ticket items, but they're important comprised of many small ticket efforts. So part of that is just education and outreach and trying to create a system that is sustainable. So after my position ends, or if I'm not there after 2 years, the last thing you ever want to see is those things just stop. You know, it's how can you keep them going? So that's always in the back of my mind. I also thought we'd make strides in single-use plastic reduction. I was excited about that. And if anyone's been watching the news, that's been a horrible victim of coronavirus. And I would say, you know, the evidence doesn't support the or the prohibition on reusable bags, but you know, that was, I think, done within a sort of a information vacuum and making the best decisions. And just, it's been a huge setback with that, because that ordinance was, as you had recommended, it goes to the full city council, and now that's on hold, and I don't know when that's going to happen. But it was sort of that broader single-use plastics that we were moving towards, as well as other communities. So that was a disappointing setback for sure. But you know, those things pop up, and who would have ever seen either one of those two issues come out as the way they did?
Okay. Do we have public comment on this agenda item? Is that right, Travis?
Wendy? I think so. Is there? I think there's public comment. I have to look at my agenda.
Yeah, you have to look at the agenda and let me know.
It just says staff comments and announcements. So,
Well, there are no one is raising their hand, so there is no
Okay.
public comment anyway, and there
Okay.
is no written
try
comment.
that for next time.
Just checking. I thought I heard a cough. Okay. Seeing no public comment, we'll move to agenda item 6.2, special events coordinator update.
So I'm just presenting what Lisa emailed me today. So I'll do the best I can, and I'm not sure I'll be able to answer any questions, but hopefully this will be all self-explanatory. So obviously, due to the public health emergency, no events or large gatherings are allowed. The city has canceled all events on the Plaza in Depot Park through the end of September, and likely planning on canceling all events through the end of the year. There's been considerable discussion with the large-scale event organizers of possibly moving their spring 2021 events to the fall time period, with the hope of having a vaccination by summer of 2021. The Tuesday night market is considered essential, and the times have been changed to 3 to 6 p.m. There is strict social distancing. Staff may explore options to bring the farmers market back to the plaza now that the plaza is open. And again, the city is strictly enforcing the no large gatherings or events in the plaza rule. And that's the update of the special events coordinator. Oh, Fred, you're muted.
Any commissioner comments? Kimberly?
I just thought of this because I hadn't, it hadn't gone through my mind that it would have something to do with the CSEC before, but how did we handle the distancing with regards to the protests?
I don't believe they did. That's a good question. I don't know. I was not there.
I heard from a friend of mine that was the liberal coming out and not worrying about C-19, just like the State House protesters came out and didn't worry about it. So now we're even.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah. But I mean, there wasn't any city regulation in terms of, I mean, we weren't going to open the plaza because of events, or, you know, because of distancing. So there just wasn't any enforcement about that.
Seems like the dam is broken.
No, I agree. I just. Okay.
It's a great question, and I have no knowledge basis to comment on it.
Me
But
neither.
yeah.
we were too high of a risk to be there protesting. So
We drove by twice blowing the horn and didn't see much social distancing on the part of the younger establishment that was out there on foot.
Well, any public comments on the special events coordinator update? Well, folks, it's been fun to see you again. And that adjourns this meeting. We'll see you again next time.
thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Sorry about the delay.
Good job, Travis and Wendy.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Really
Good to see
windy.
you all.
Yeah.
Good to be meeting again. I'm out of here.
Bye-bye.